Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today on our session on how to use news to deepen donor relationships. We're happy to have so many people here today, but we are at the top of the hour and we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So let's get started. My name is Catherine Bergerson. I am the Vice President of Marketing with Newsbank and Insightful. I will be joined today by my colleague, Sarah Landman. Just as we get started here, I want to let you know that the session is being recorded and we will send a copy after the session via email. Throughout the session today, we'll be happy to take your questions. You'll see the gray bar on your screen. You can type your questions in there and we will do our best to get to all of them. If we happen to run short on time, we do commit to getting back to you. So as we get started, I thought I'd quickly share a bit of background about Insightful. Insightful is a new software that automates the process of getting crucial news and information about your donors wherever they are in the world. So this is vetted, credible information that provides your team insights so you can deepen those donor relationships and ultimately raise more money and advance your mission. So we accomplish that through an easy-to-use interface that efficiently delivers the right information to the right person at the right time. And the breadth and depth of the information in Insightful is unmatched by any other resource, and it's all available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from any device. And as we know, in today's connected world, being able to access that information, whether you're in the office or remotely, is more important than ever. Insightful's parent company is Newsbank. So Newsbank powers our content, and we're proud to share that this year, 2022, actually in October, is Newsbank's 50th anniversary as a company. So we're really proud of this accomplishment. So the reason that we're all here today is to learn more about how to use news to deepen those donor relationships. To lead our discussion is Sarah Landman. Sarah has served as a major gift officer and leader of 2 national fundraising consulting firms. She's helped raise more than $500 million for nonprofits during her 18-year career. A frequent speaker on various topics, including innovative fundraising strategies, like the one she's going to share with us today, she recently presented at AFP Florida and at NEDRA conferences this summer. She currently serves as the Executive Vice President of Insightful. Please join me in welcoming Sarah Landman. Hi, Sarah.
Hello, thank you, Catherine, and thank you everybody for being here to talk about how to use news to deepen those donor relationships. And Catherine mentioned that my background is in major gifts fundraising and consulting. And I also have kind of an interesting background in the news. I grew up around news. My dad is the publisher of a small town community newspaper. So in Winona, Minnesota, it's the Winona Post. And I just grew up watching what a big part of the community the news was and how much information is in the news about people. So I've always placed a value on that and on news from a young age. And that translated into my fundraising career because when I started as a major gifts officer, I wanted to know that news about my donors and my prospective donors. And unfortunately, when I started, it was in the year 2004. So it wasn't so easy to get that news. And I would sit in the file room, digging through files and cabinets to try to find clippings about past information about my donors, and would have to wait usually a couple weeks to get the current clippings about anyone that was in the news about in our institution. So I was really excited to learn about Insightful and join them about 4 years ago as a consultant, and then 3 years ago officially, to really take the intersection of news, relationship fundraising, and technology and help nonprofits utilize this crucial tool in order to deepen those relationships and raise more money. So I am going to share my screen. Give me one moment. Oh, whoops, sorry. And share my slideshow here. And I want to, and I'll turn my camera off. Okay, so, oh, apologies. Okay, so I want to start with the case to use news to deepen relationships. And one of the first things is relying on relationship information, donors just organically telling development team members about things that were happening in their lives between 2020 and even now. The same in-person opportunities that they usually had to share that with the institution, in-person donor visits, homecomings, football games, those events really didn't happen for a couple years, even special events where if your donors, your trustees had things going on in their lives, it just kind of came up. 2020 to 22, that didn't happen as much. Also, there's an expectation for nonprofits to know when their donors are in the news, or when expectation for donors that the nonprofits know when they're in the news, especially if they're major donors, trustees. They just kind of expect you to know. They won't just tell you. I had that argument, not argument, but discussion with a VP a while ago who said, well, my donors just tell me. And my retort to that was, yes, sometimes, not always, not all donors. Sometimes donors, they don't want to, if something is huge happening, they may not have the time to stop everything and let your institution know. Some donors don't want to come off as looking like they're bragging. And if something awful has happened, a death in their family, again, they may just not have the time to just tell you. So keeping up on the news and knowing it is just kind of the right thing to do for your top donors and your trustees. And technology, a number of different technologies, makes this easier than ever to stay on top of your donors in the news. And I want to share a book, a marketing book that I've read. It's called Obvious Atoms. If you or your team members have any marketing responsibilities this is a great book to read. It's a 20-minute read. It's an older book, but the whole premise of the book is that the simplest answer or idea is usually the right one. And my answer to how do I know more about my donors is the news. It is literally the simplest and easiest answer to the problem. I need to know more about my donors. The news provides the best resources to do that. And it's the easiest and it's the most accessible to all of us, no matter what our institution's budgets are. You can have access to the news, and that's going to give you vetted information in order to take action with your donors. There's a cost to missing news about your donors. When you miss news, you can appear to look uncaring to the donor, and really it provides missed opportunities to connect when great things are happening to your donors and they're in the news. If they are named to a board, if they have given a major gift to another institution, if their company has gone public, if they've recently sold their company, if they've gotten married, if they've had a grandchild or a child, all of these events in their lives are opportunities for your organization to see it in the news and then engage with your donors. And when you're not doing that, somebody else might. Somebody else's flowers might get there first. Their text might get there first, their email, their call. Another organization can be on top of something if they're watching the news, and if you're not, the question is, I've heard from X organization. Why have I not heard from Y organization? And that, again, can have a true cost. Recently, there was a university, it was in the press, that they missed an obit for a major donor's mother, a $70 million donor. They missed the obit of her mother. And that donor was so upset that they missed that obituary that she publicly went out in the press, wrote an open letter about how that was not acceptable, that institution looked uncaring, and she walked away. And that was unfortunate for the institution. It was unfortunate for the donor. And the saddest part is it didn't have to. There's cost to missing information in the news. There's also so many benefits. When you keep on top of your donors in the news and are able to look back at information about your donors in the news, it can help your gift officers or anyone with a frontline fundraising responsibility look better prepared. They're better prepared with information that will guide their conversations. Another benefit, it helps you show that you care. When your donors are in the news and someone is able to reach out to them and congratulate them, acknowledge things in their lives, it's a one more way to show them that you appreciate them, you care about them. And again, donor cultivation. It's an easy step to help move a donor closer to your organization and cultivate them for future engagements. Okay, quick case study. What is the benefit of news information? The benefit is, and return on investment on even the time of watching the news, is $1 million. We have a customer that's a social service organization that looked up a donor in the news and found a land transfer for that donor in another state. And that helped make a connection with somebody that donor cared about, that was a trusted advisor to that donor. That donor, it was a new donor that gave a nice gift, but nobody knew anything about. That relationship connection led to that donor making a $1 million gift weeks later. That donor had never met with anyone from that organization. And that one piece of information that led to the relationship connection produced $1 million gift. And that's the true benefit of information, especially vetted news information that's out there for anybody to find about top donors, prospects, new donors that kind of fall out of the sky that you need to know more about. It's in the news. Another success story, Columbia University takes news very seriously. They do a really good job of tracking especially their trustees and top donors in the news. And this has resulted in them finding a number of opportunities where their donors have won awards and honors. And that's resulted in cultivation actions from their president, from their gift officer team. News is what does that and gives the Columbia opportunities to act and reach out to the people that are most generous to them. Cornell University, they needed information about young entrepreneurs that had recently raised $160 million in venture cap funding. They looked for it everywhere. They found it in the news, in vetted newspaper sources. A law school we work with, they used the news, our historical news, to uncover an interest in a prospective donor that connected them to one of their case items. And without finding that information in historical news, they wouldn't have found it. They wouldn't have talked about the case item they talked about. But that guided that conversation with the donor. It was information about the patriarch of that family and that he was a veteran. They have veteran scholarships. So they were able to kind of bring that up. It guided the conversation. And that family's currently being cultivated for a major gift. So again, what you can find in back news, historical news, gives you information to guide those conversations in order to have a better donor experience, better donor cultivation. A medical foundation that we work with, they are constantly finding key information about philanthropic appointments and awards honors. They found an op-ed in the news that a donor expected them to know and reach out about. And how they work is their research team finds these insights in the news and they share them with their gift officer and president in order to reach out to the donors, and it results in golden and game-changing cultivation opportunities for this medical foundation. And they're finding that in the news. They're not finding that in wealth screening tools or any of the number of other tools out there to find information about their donors. They're finding things that they can actually use to connect with their donors in the news, and it's making a difference for them. I want to talk for a few minutes about the type of information that's in the news. And that's information about privately held companies. The Library of Congress states that the best way to find information about those privately held companies is the news. There's so much there about the history of the company, about what they're doing philanthropically, the people that own the company. So it's the best way to kind of get an idea of, okay, is my donor owns a privately held company? Is this a privately held company that does X amount of business a year or Y? And the news is a great way to kind of gauge how big is that company my donor owns, and what might be an appropriate thing to ask for or level to ask for. I know that that's a common challenge the number of organizations face is they know their donors own companies, they have no earthly idea about the size of those companies or things that are happening with those companies. Also, news about special purpose acquisition companies. It's a best practice if you have donors that are involved with those to follow the donors in the news, follow the special purpose acquisition company. That is available in the news. Foundations. There are so many articles about foundations in the news that will help you approach that foundation. I determine whether that foundation is a good fit for you to go after. What else they support. Foundations. Information, golden information about foundations and the people involved with them are in the news. Real estate transactions. Depending on where you're looking, there are a number of depending on the state and municipality, most real estate transactions are in the news. Also, land purchases. We talked a little bit before about the value of that land purchase information to the social service organization. That was in the news. That land purchase information literally helped them close $1 million gift in record time without a visit. Obituaries are in the news, and obituaries are important to know in real time about your donors, their family members, your trustees, but also historical obituaries can give you a good idea about family trees and wealth transfer. Marriage and divorce announcements are in the news. So is so is philanthropic activity. When a donor is in the news about a philanthropy event, they tend to give quotes about their aspirations, about what they want to do with their philanthropic plan. There's just so much in both current news and historical news about a donor's philanthropy, where they're actually being interviewed, and you can take that information to guide the conversation. Millennial major donors. This is a topic I just presented on at AFP Planet Philanthropy here in Florida. Millennial major donors and prospects are hard to reach, and they need to be handled a little bit differently than past generations of donors. They also have higher expectations. They've grown up mostly with sharing so much of their life online, and they expect people to just know things that are happening about them and in their life. It's not necessarily a reasonable expectation, but it's an expectation. And especially if they're in a news source, they expect you to know about it. If they are a leadership donor or prospective donor. That's just something they want you to know about. And again, they're harder to connect with, and news presents an opportunity for gift officer teams to reach out. It can be a door opener. You may have a millennial that is tied to your institution, and you see that they were just promoted to a leadership position in their company, to a CEO role. It's a great way to open the door with them to say, hey, congratulations, I saw this news article about you. So it's a way in if you're having a hard time connecting, because they appreciate that you're paying attention to the things that are happening in their lives. And they, in general, want more authentic relationships and want to know that you really care about them as individuals. And keeping on top of them in the news is a way to do that. They also are more aware that there's tech to help nonprofits do that in an easier manner. Deeper relationships lead to revenue. It just does. It helps your gift officers look caring and even omniscient when they know what's happening with their donors in the news in a timely manner, and they can reach out. And keeping on top of the news about donors also helps you and your organization share in the joy and difficult times that your donors are having. If you are in relationship with these major donors, trustees, they're making leadership investments in you, and when you keep on top of what's happening with them, it's an opportunity. If some great things are happening, you can reach out, acknowledge it, and be a part of that. Again, and also difficult times, if they lose a family member, your organization can have that information quickly to take the right action. It might mean your university president needs to book travel, or VP needs to book travel to get to those services, or it's sending the right flower or memorial gift or email or call to reach out and let them know that you saw it and that you're thinking about them during their difficult times. And the best times and the worst times that's what we remember, right? That's just what we as humans remember. And your donors are no different. They remember who shows up and is there for them and is acknowledging them in the best times and the worst times. And keeping up on news is a way for you to do that and have that vetted, and you have that opportunity to connect. And in general, it deepens the relationship with that donor for you to share in the newsworthy times in their lives. Couple recommendations in order to use news to deepen donor relationships. One is to find ways to make news an easier part of your workflow. There's a number of technologies that can do this. Insightful is one of them, to just make it easier to keep on top of that news and not make it a burden and not miss things. Another one is to engage others. I know that we all have bandwidth issues and there's never enough time. At a minimum, if your organization wants to do more to follow top donors and trustees, maybe engage the office of your vice president or president, or the administrative or executive assistant, and say, hey, can you set up some alerts, or can you go into this platform and follow these individuals and kind of comb through and see if it's, and help us when there's news about those individuals. Watch that and let someone know. Also, your trustees, especially if they're retired, they may be willing to follow some individuals, companies, foundations in the news. News is what has made many of them successful. Couple quick stories about that. I went to a presentation with an individual named Greg Mazzillo. He's the CEO of a company called Proforma. He found information when his company was new. He was trying to get in the door of a big company in Cleveland. They said no. He read the Cleveland Plain Dealer and saw that there was a grant for Made in Cleveland. It was a Made in Cleveland program where there were tax incentives. So he called, he mentioned that, got in the door, that represented his first $1 million deal. And his company grew and grew and grew from there. So many of your donors have stories like that. And another individual I know who's a very successful wealth manager and major donor is religious about following news about his hometown and national business news. And he saw that the company had a recent CEO change back early in his career. He reached out to the CEO, and that was one of his first and biggest deals. So the people that are giving at a leadership level, again, they recognize the importance of news and may be able to help you follow it. And just in general, there is a responsibility to know about the things that are happening in the lives of your donors, especially if it's in the news. It's good stewardship for those donor relationships. They have an expectation that you know, and it's just in general the right thing to do. So I just want to encourage you, however you can do it, to follow news about your most important donors and prospects. It used to be the 80-20 rule, that 80% of resources was coming from 20% of individuals. I saw recently that that's moved more to 95% of the resources are coming from 5% of individuals. And it just shows that we can't afford to miss things and miss opportunities with that 5%. And staying on top of news on those individuals will help you deepen those relationships, raise more money, and avoid the relationship cost of potentially missing things about your donors. And with that, I am going to open it up for your questions.
Wow, Sarah, thank you. Thank you so much. What incredible information. Yes, so let's take a pause, and again, the gray bar that says questions, type them in. We had a few questions come in as Sarah was presenting, so let's start with those, Sarah. Let me pull them up. But please, as I know we committed to 30 minutes, but let's spend some time. And again, we'll send out a recording of this. So if you need to jump off at the bottom of the hour, we understand. Okay. Oh, a question about the recording. Thank you, Anne. Yes, we will send out a recording. So everybody who registered, whether you could attend or not, will get a recording within the next 24 hours. Okay, Kim, what sites and resources do you find to be the best with information on births, engagements, obituaries, news, etc.?
Okay, well, I'm just looking at who this is. Okay, one of the best resources, it is Insightful. We have all of those things, and Kim, I think you asked that question before, and I know where you're from, and I have good news for you. Your organization recently purchased Insightful, so you have access to Insightful. You're being onboarded now. I would just talk to your team, get a seat. It's a great way to stay on top of those life events.
Excellent, awesome. Craig has a question about Boolean search strings. Does Insightful, so rather than kind of news in general, does Insightful as support complex or Boolean search strings?
Yes, they do. They when you upload everyone you want to follow in Insightful, it kind of automatically does a Boolean search on a complex Boolean search on all of those individuals. There is also a way that you can do one-off Boolean searches in Insightful on specific topics.
Excellent, and I'm sure if, Craig, if you and your team would like an individualized demonstration, we'd be happy to show you, so please reach out to us and we'll be happy to go into more depth on that for you and your specific questions. Okay, here is another one. Now, Sarah, this is kind of draws on your expertise and some of my background too. How to best establish a, in quotes, shared mission between a development team and the communications department. Thank you, Peter, for that question.
Sure. So in general, I think it's just important for each department to know the goals of each other. So for example, it could be the goal of development to look for new prospects, people that are, being named a CEO, that are being mentioned in conjunction with business moves, things that would point towards, capacity and success. Those are things a development department would, or things about their donors if a communications department catches it. And on the other side, a communications department may be looking for success stories of current donors, the development department's donors and prospects to write about in a university magazine for those regular newsletters, just interesting things that are happening in the lives of donors and prospects. So I would say first and foremost, it's important for each department to share each other's goals, for leaderships, the leaders of each department to regularly meet and just have an open dialogue on how they can support one another in their shared goal. Catherine, do you have anything to add to that?
I couldn't agree more. And I think certainly those regular meetings sometimes can feel like, oh, it's just one more thing on my calendar, and you push them off. But how important it really is to keep that connection, whether it's at the top of, depending on how large your organization is, if it's the two leaders meeting, or maybe it's some of the directors to say, hey, I'm the director of alumni affairs, I'm the director of major gifts, director of PR, director of marketing. Maybe even at that level to come together once a month or once a quarter to say, here's where our focus is and how do we share, and then the communication team can say, we're really looking for testimonials. Who would you like to highlight? Who do you want to get more engaged? So keep those regular meetings and really give them some forethought about how you can help each other. And don't let it become one of those meetings that you put off because it's just a standing meeting on your calendar. Okay. And I think Sarah and I could talk about this endlessly. So we could do a whole session, Sarah, on collaboration between fundraising and communications departments. So here's another good question. I like this one. Google Alerts. Okay, we get this so frequently. How is Insightful different from Google Alerts, but how do departments get beyond what they're doing right now? So Google Alerts is a great entree, but how do you get beyond that?
Yeah, so the difference between Insightful and a Google Alert is Insightful actually licenses Google's an ad platform, first and foremost. We are a news tool. We actually get the feeds from all of our publishers, and we license the content. So if you get an alert in Insightful, you're able to, with one click, get the actual content. You're not going to run up against a paywall, and you're going to get it sooner. We have a customer actually that had a donor that won a really big award, and they were following them in Insightful, and they got that information just in time for a gift officer meeting with that donor, for him to see it right away and congratulate them in person. And they shared with us that they got the Google alert on that event days later. So speed and getting behind paywalls and efficiency too. So in Insightful, you can follow anybody you want to follow, and you get one email a day. You don't get 100 emails a day on everyone you're following. We've heard from our customers that when they just set up a Google alert, it makes it easy to miss things because there's so many emails and it's hard to keep on top of them. I will step back though and say I recognize that not every organization has the resources for paid tools, and at a minimum, do a Google alert. Subscribe to your local paper, keep up on your local paper. The session is about the value of news in general. I would love for you to get it in Insightful, but however you're getting it, it's so valuable for those relationships with your top people. We've just seen it over and over again, and I think every nonprofit should be able to use it and cultivate their donors and deepen those relationships to raise more money.
What wonderful advice,
So
Sarah.
I have one more thing there. So
Sure.
we recently, Catherine and I are in regular meetings with a news expert, and he shared something interesting, and that's that 95% of significant daily papers in the US are now behind a paywall of some form. They're behind a paywall, and 69%. And so that was of significant daily papers, the daily papers that these communities get that write about their people. 69% of all newspaper sources are behind paywalls. So that's a question I get in Google versus Insightful or anyone that licenses the content, just something to share there about the paywall issue, and that it's becoming more and more prevalent, which is the way news is going.
It certainly is. It certainly is. And I apologize. My sound cut out for a minute there, so I apologize if I'm just a little disjointed. We have a lot of questions, and Sarah, if you have time, I have time, we can stay on and continue to answer them, maybe for 5 more minutes or so. And
yeah.
Anything that we can't get to, we will reach out to you and get an answer or one-on-one. But this is a great discussion, and we're thrilled to see that so many questions are coming in, particularly about Insightful and how it works. Before you jump off if you need to, and I understand for time, Sarah and I will be back a week from today, and we'll send this in our follow-up email, and we're going to do a full demonstration of Insightful and how it works. Today, we just wanted to share with you kind of the exciting ways that news can be used and the importance of that in your donor relationships. But a week from today, same time, same place, we will be back and actually dig into the meat of Insightful. But stay on, and we'll get that invitation out to you, and we'll just keep answering questions if that's okay with you, Sarah.
Yeah, works for me. Okay. I'm grateful for the questions. Thank you. It makes this more fun.
Absolutely. I love the conversation. Okay. Ooh. Advice on how to handle negative news stories.
Yes. Negative news is tough, right? First of all, it's important that you get the negative news. If it's out there, if there is anything negative about your institution or people that are close to your institution, your trustees, significant donors, it's better to know than not to know, right? And as far as what you do with that, it's informing the right person that's attached to that donor as quickly as possible, I think, number one. And also just kind of best practice institutional wise, to have, if something really bad happens for either someone tied to your institution or your institution, having a plan ahead of time on the steps on what happens. So even a donor, let's say you're a researcher, you find this, having a plan and a protocol of what to do with it, who needs to know what, when. The time to have that plan is before you find something. And also just in general as an institution, most institutions don't have people that are versed in crisis communications. And when really awful things happen, and I've recently been involved with this, and just want to encourage everyone to have a consultant you trust on speed dial, ready to go if the worst happens, who can guide you through that, because it's not something many of us have happen, but when it does happen, even the way you say something or the order of words or timing matters, and it helps to have someone who's an expert.
I couldn't agree more from my experience as a communication director, and a plan for a variety of different circumstances. So whether it's, something that happens that's out of your control to a high-level donor or a trustee, how do you navigate the sensitivities of that conversation to perhaps it's a natural disaster that struck, to anything that's going to be in the news that you can be keeping tabs on? How do you respond differently, whether it's you reaching out to your donor or knowing that they're going to be reaching out to you because maybe they're wintering in Florida, but they're from Minnesota and they see that the hurricanes are coming, and they want to know how the institution is doing or how the hospital is holding up. Just being in sync with the communications that perhaps the PR team and the development team are going out, so you don't step on each other. That's another really important point, I think, between the development and communication teams, to be in sync on those crisis emergency kind of response plans.
Absolutely.
Okay, so next, let's see. So we have a few questions just about Insightful that we will reach out to you and either set up a one-on-one demonstration or come to our webinar next week. Let's see, as it relates to like news and privacy, this is a good one. People are increasingly concerned about online privacy. So navigating that balance between it's a conversation, but yet you don't want to feel like you're sort of keeping tabs on a donor.
Absolutely. So with news and press, it's different than the data about someone. Right now, there's a number of products that they're selling, hey, we can get all of this information about interests and wealth and this and that about your donor. I think that's a lot different. And having that and maybe having something come out the wrong way or your donors being worried about that, then, hey, this donor was just in an article in their local paper in Rochester, Minnesota, that they were given an award by the Rotary Club. That's different because it's out there and in the press. And a number of donors, especially at that high level, they're used to being in the press, number one. And they even probably purchased something called a clippings service back in the day to keep on top of themselves and their company. So it really isn't weird to them. Obviously, you have to take what it is and what makes sense. And you should probably, there's an art and a science to that, but I don't see that as a privacy situation. If they're giving to you and they're in the press, I've never heard of a donor being upset about that. And we work with some really high profile institutions and donors. And we've never gotten feedback that, hey, Frank Smith was upset because the vice president of development congratulated him on this honor or sent a timely acknowledgement of a family member's passing.
I think that's absolutely accurate. And in today's world, with so much information being out there, that it's almost expected versus the online privacy that comes with financial information or private information. The news is a totally different realm.
Or this person Googled this the other day. Like, that's where I get a little creeped out when, somehow there's just all of this black box information about interests and I don't know. If somebody can't tell me how they got something, that's when I get nervous. But if it's been in a news source, that's fair game.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, to respect everyone's time, we've gone a bit over, and I know that there are a few other questions, but that leads us into our next steps. So, Sarah, thank you so much. What valuable information, very exciting. I think that we can tell by the number of questions and our attendees today that people are excited to know more about how to use news. And so, as I mentioned, Sarah and I will be back next week on Thursday, June 16th, again, 1 p.m. Eastern. And we'll show you the inner workings of Insightful. And we really recommend this for any member of your development team, from prospect researchers, team leaders, alumni relations, patient relations. Extend the invitation to any of your colleagues who might be interested. If you are interested, you can download the slides. There's a download section right by the question section in the gray bar. Download those slides, and we've got links right into everything, so it's very easy to use. We'll also send it in a follow-up email. If you aren't able to make it next week, we can, or you prefer a customized presentation, we can do that too. So again, please reach out to us. Sarah has generously provided her personal contact information, and she will make sure that we get a demonstration for you. So with that, I would like to also encourage you, if you have not heard, we have a great new podcast called No More, Raise More. It's a podcast for fundraising professionals that share stories of donors and development officers coming together to share successes and learning opportunities and places they've stumbled and where they turned it around. And so it's a fantastic podcast. You can find it wherever you listen to your podcasts, Apple, Spotify. And again, the link is in this presentation. We encourage you to listen to it and tell us what you think. We'd love to hear more as we plan for future presentations or future episodes. Finally, as you exit today, you'll see a brief 3-question survey. We'd love to know what you thought about today's session so we can improve in the future. On behalf of the Insightful team and the News Bank team, we thank you for spending part of your day with us. And we hope to see you at our session next week or setting up a one-on-one in the future. Thanks again, Sarah.
Thank you to everyone. Again, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to learn about how you use news and how that's been helpful to you, and continue the conversation on LinkedIn or via email. So really grateful for your time and everything you do for the nonprofits you serve. It's so important. Nonprofits are out there making our world better, and they couldn't do it without you and your work. So we are truly grateful for everything you do to power philanthropy.
Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.